Hi class, my name is Tessie Omina and I picked Mission to Immigrants as my research topic. My paper focuses on Christian attitudes towards immigrants around the world. Migration has become one of the biggest global issues of our time. Migrants move because of a variety of reasons to areas perceived to have sufficient resources for upward socioeconomic mobility. These reasons range from economic and environmental to persecution and civil or ethnic wars. Within the Bible, the migration is a consistent theme, as from the Genesis directive to multiply and fill the earth. Migration has indeed forced Christians to examine teachings about justice, law, and righteousness. The media portrays migrants as a drain to the society they move into. However, immigrants should be viewed through Bible teachings. Leviticus 19:33 talks about not oppressing aliens as they dwell among the Israelites, as they themselves were aliens in Egypt. In the world today, there's a huge number of vulnerable people being displaced. Refugees and asylum seekers fall under the groups of most marginalized people in society. In my paper, I looked at 4 countries as case studies on what their immigrant policies were and how they affect these societies. In the developed world, I looked at comparisons between US and Canada, and in the developing world, I looked at Kenya and Uganda. The US used to be a major immigrant hosting country. However, recent immigration reforms are not favorable to immigrants, something that has promoted anti immigration rhetoric, even among some Christians. The US government has even used the Bible to justify anti immigration laws, thus oppressing immigrants. The most disappointing anti immigrant law was the recent separation of immigrants from their children and placement of these children into camps which look like cages. It was disappointing to see how many evangelical Christians were in support of this inhumane act. Canada has implemented favorable immigration policies which have resulted in immigrants contributing largely to the Canadian economy. Churches partner with the government to facilitate immigrant programs. Provinces have taken initiatives to support multicultural programs that promote relationships between newcomers and Canadian nationals. Examples of these are the Mennonite Center, Catholic Social Services, and the All Nations Center, just to name a few. The role of churches in immigrant settlement and integration, a project run by Christian communities, carries out programs that involve newcomers in Canada. Between the 2 countries, Canada has the favorable immigration policies, and this seems to have a positive effect on the communities that the migrants move into. We can compare this to the story of Jacob in the Bible, as this story gives us a clear idea of the contributions migrants bring into societies. Kenya is a huge immigrant hub. It is host to the biggest refugee camp in the world. Although Kenya has hosted refugees for a long period of time, they haven't implemented good refugee policies. The refugees are not allowed to leave the camps that they reside. This is an injustice because it limits the type of activities that immigrants can do, as they are not given many opportunities to get involved in the community. Kenya has also threatened to close down the refugee camps, which are a host to a lot of refugees fleeing wars. Uganda experiences a lot of cross border migration as it is situated near war torn countries. Uganda has favorable refugee policies that help vulnerable people who are fleeing wars. For example, they give land to refugees for farming and accord them all services available to Ugandan nationals. Churches play a big role in welcoming immigrants in the country and also help them integrate into society. This started with a simple model of integration of refugees into local communities. Uganda has some of the most progressive immigrant policies in the world. In the case of Kenya and Uganda, Kenya has a lot to learn from Uganda's immigration policies, as this shows that refugees, when given opportunities, contribute a lot to society. It is also the neighborly thing to do, as the Bible directs us. Mission to immigrants should not start with the aim of converting them. The biblical view on immigrants is that they are not different from everyone else and therefore should not be seen as other. We should treat immigrants with love regardless of what their situation is or where they come from. Some churches have taken initiatives to establish immigrant and refugee ministries. This is a step forward in ministering to newcomers and in line with teachings of the Bible. This has created opportunities by bringing the world to Christian doorsteps, and instead of having sending missions, Christians are able to minister to the world right at their doorstep. However, there is still much to be done. Implementing structures that support in depth work with newcomers should be a main focus in ministering to immigrants. These should include things such as language classes, as some of the newcomers do not speak their local languages. They should also have support groups for people who have traumatic experiences, especially those fleeing from war torn areas. As Christians, we should look towards embracing everyone as God's people in fulfillment with the gospel mandate to love one another as Christ Himself loved us. Jesus set an example of breaking boundaries and always affirming the dignity of the human person before all else, a perfect example for us to follow. Grasping the Bible's missiological purpose of 1 Peter 2, we should see ourselves as immigrants in this land, as our sights are set towards heaven. In this sense, we should treat other aliens as we ourselves would like to be treated. Being the chosen people of God as the Christian church, we should view ourselves as immigrants, as we are not of this world.